Sup, y'all? I am letting my nails dry, and I've been working on these nails for like hours. Not exactly a nail person per se, but I am a painter. I've always wondered why like I don't enjoy doing my nails that much, especially for a girl who enjoys style, fashion, color, and like every woman alive. Well, not every woman alive, but many women, especially in this hemisphere, really enjoy painting their nails. They enjoy it so much that they go and get their nails done very often. I get my nails done occasionally too, but I definitely enjoy doing it from time to time. Anyways, today I saw an opportunity to really go ahead and have fun with it. So that's like actually not my best one. And yes, I need to touch it up. That's actually the only part I do need to touch up. But this is the final product. Yes, this is my favorite one. And this one. Okay, that was my left hand. And then my right hand came out really dope too. I like it. Anyway, so this is my first attempt at this. But anyway, so I'm letting these bitches dry. Bitches. Letting them dry. And I figured I was like, perhaps I should record the video that I want to record now, because if I do such a thing, they'll dry. Win-win, right? I'm going to distract myself with this video, so thank you. This week at the National Gallery in London, climate protesters, I call them climate organizers, but yes, it was a protest for sure. Climate activists, which is the equivalent of saying people who give a shit about the planet like imploding and civilization as we know it being extinct, and mass destruction, terrible weather circumstances, a lot of devastation, mostly for the poor and those living in poverty, I should say. I hate saying the poor. Those living in poverty, and then also a lot of people in like along earthquake fault lines, the earthquake lines, in hurricane zones, things like that. So in order to avoid the devastation, right, climate activists like Peter Klamas, Greta Thunberg, and these women in London who have already had appearances in court. I tweeted a photograph of a CNBC. I didn't read the whole article, admittedly, but I did like what I saw, the information part of that, so I shared it. But yeah, so basically what happened was, if you didn't know, we all know Vincent van Gogh for the most part. You might not even know who he is, but you know of him. You know his name. He's that famous, right? But the interesting thing about Vincent van Gogh is that he wasn't famous when he was, people obviously knew he was dope while he was alive, but like the Vincent van Gogh we know of today is not exactly the experience he had while he was on Earth. Excuse me, I didn't mean to say on Earth. I meant in this realm, like active and alive by like human standards. So yeah, anyways, Vincent van Gogh's artwork is it's globally renowned, it's worldwide, and it is highly sought after. It's loved. I love it. The crazy thing is, this particular painting, the reason why you hear me talking about this right now is because that painting is very significant for me. Very significant. And so is the climate crisis, because the climate crisis, while it is completely in the the subdivision of like environmentalism, it's in the category of like ecological concerns, I suppose. While that is true, it is also very... Did I just ruin these nails? Partially. No, I didn't. That was close. Such a close call. Anyway, so yeah. So the thing about climate is it falls also into the category of children's rights, which we all know I'm the children's rights human. So that definitely falls into my domain. It is consistently in my thoughts. It's not really something... Most days don't go by where I have like a thought related to climate change and the crisis. Like most days. Definitely not even half a week, but most days don't go by. So on the subject of Vincent van Gogh, Dan Rather actually brought up a really good point. He said, as always, he said something along the lines of like, the destruction of things that we love is not exactly the way to go about, proving the point about the destruction of our planet. While there's merit to what he said, there's definitely a lot of merit to what they did. So I'd like to address that right now. So first I'm going to tell you what that painting specifically means to me. And it's very significant. I'm going to tell you two main things about that painting. So I've always loved Van Gogh. Always. He's definitely one of my favorite painters. I think I've decided recently my favorite painter of all time, which my outfit should not surprise you. I believe it's Renoir. It's a big statement for me to make. I love Botticelli. I love Van Gogh. Picasso's lit. Basquiat's insane. I love all of these artists, these painters, Matisse, Gauguin. I think they're dope. But Van Gogh is special. The thing about Van Gogh is, like, he was, very much so like us. He was very much so a person who was a person. He's a person. He was a human. He was a hell of a human. And he struggled. I believe they may have institutionalized him like they did to me multiple times, I think, if I'm not mistaken. I know that, he made a lot of his beautiful artworks and not exactly the ideal scenarios, but, now in 2022, we're having a full conversation about Van Gogh. So, yeah, and my favorite Van Gogh meme is the Van Goghing, and it's like Van Gogh's there, then Van Gogh, he's leaving. So silly. So anyway, so the sunflowers painting, right? Why is that significant to me? My first story, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to try and go in chronological order of, like, what they happened. Roughly around the same time, actually. Okay, so I'm going to start. Okay, I'll start with this one. So I also, when I retweeted the Van Gogh statement that Dan Rather had made an elaborate, continued, added in my 55 cents, I also included an image of a sketch of mine. It's a pastel drawing that I did. It's a beautiful pastel drawing that I did of sunflowers. Here's the history behind that photograph I shared with you guys like an hour ago. So I was institutionalized, right, as I just mentioned, as people who follow me know. Unfortunately, I hate explaining the story, but this part of the story bothers me, and I'm not going to do it always. I'm just going to let people figure it out. But yes, somebody lied about me, said that I was suicidal, but I was not, which is so silly, because, like, look at this. This is my favorite nail out of all these gorgeous nails. Why? It's a fucking smiley face. I like life this much, right? Always have. Yes, are there challenges? Has my life been easy by, like, certain standards? If you ask certain people to say she had this growing up, and then it's like, okay, that's cool, but can I tell you X, Y, and Z about that scenario, and X, Y, and A through Z times 26 about this scenario? Because I'm pretty sure you'll decide, like, oh, this woman being a children's rights activist at 35 years old, perhaps there was maybe something that happened to her that wasn't so great during childhood. Perhaps there was many, and perhaps it extended into adulthood as well. You could take that perhaps and remove it, because yes, those things are true. So anyway, so I was forced into treatment, which is what they call it. Really, it's jail for those who don't break the law but break societal norms. And then they start to experiment on you with drugs of their choosing. I don't believe in drugs. I don't do drugs. The only drug I actually do, I would put it on the screen, but it's not legal everywhere, is marijuana. It's actually legal in my jurisdiction. I'm currently in Canada. So with all that being said, one time I was in the hospital, it's hard to tell. I think that drawing I made around 2012, 2013, that would make sense. It was definitely before 2015, because I'm thinking about the apartment I took that photo in. So it's definitely before 2015. But yeah, so I was in the hospital, fucking jail for the socially undesirable and the supposedly untrained. Anyway, so I'm hella trained. Don't worry about it. So anyway, so I was in occupational therapy. What's occupational therapy? I'll tell you. It's basically arts and crafts for, like, when they're trying to make you feel like you're in daycare, but you're an adult. So yeah, that's basically what it was. So I was in arts and crafts. Sometimes people do puzzles. It depends on how drugged you are in the moment and how badly they've fucked with your mental. So I was staying in a medium security unit. It's actually a hell of a high security unit. It's just not as high as the highest one, which is more like solitary confinement, but the one I was in was more primed for monitoring, definitely not for healing of any kind. So I was in this unit, and you get, like, certain privileges and, like, things that you can do as you go along in these places. So I had occupational therapy. I had to fight to get it, right? Because otherwise I was just like, I wasn't twiddling my thumbs, but you get the image. Like, I was twiddling my thumbs at the fucking, like, hospital room cell, right? So anyway, so it's basically a jail where they don't want you to think you're in jail, but it's definitely a jail and they're fucking with you so badly. That's pretty much what happened to me. It's torture physically by definition, like, and no, there's no, like, the Geneva Conventions, prisoners of technical war that are clearly prisoners of war actually have more protections than I did in that moment as far as human rights goes. So I'm in occupational therapy, finally get there, right? I get there, and I remember this woman asked me, like, a questionnaire, and she was like, who do you identify with in, like, society or something? What public figures? I think I said Tupac and Nelson Mandela. And she was trying to convince me I shouldn't. I'm like, bro, fuck you. Anyways, but you can't say that there, or else like back to the gulag you go, or like the worse the conditions get in the gulag. So anyways, so I was in occupational therapy, and I had the opportunity. I'm a painter. I am actually a painter. That's my medium of choice when it comes to visual arts. But I also draw, and I do many things, right? Many things. Check it out. I can paint my nails too very well. So anyway, so I was in occupational therapy, and I picked the pastels, right, this particular day. And I drew the exact painting you see, the exact drawing you see. She gave me, the task was, they give you, for some reason I couldn't just enjoy myself, right? They had to give me tasks. Fucking horror. So she gives me tasks, right? So I'm like, okay, what's my task today, right? At least I'm not like being technically interrogated. I am being monitored and observed in this, but it's not an interrogation, which is AKA at a meeting with a doctor. It's an interrogation. There's no other way to define it. So I was drawing. I drew the pastel like of that you see exactly of sunflowers. I finished when I decided I was done as an artist, established as an artist at this point, definitely fucking artist, and definitely a creative, but like I was an artist. So this bitch comes around and she looks at me and she says, it's not done. She tells me my drawing, my pastel drawing of sunflowers is not done. I looked at her and said, it is. What do you mean it's not done? It's done. But I'm not going to get into the, I don't want to be tortured worse that day or the next day or until they release me. So I have to play nice in that situation, right? That's survival. So I have to be respectful to a certain degree, but I have to also put up my, spiritually, you always have boundaries. You always can say yes or no. But, like, maybe I didn't want to have rotted fish 5 days in a row, which actually did happen to me one dinner when everyone else got other things and they knew I was pretty much vegetarian. Like, let's give her rotted fish. I won't tell you what happened the last night, but let's just say I made my point and then they gave me normal food the next day. They stopped trying to starve me that week. So, yeah, so, I didn't want those things to happen, so I had to play along. So she looked at it, she said it's not done. I said it. She says, it was near the end of the thing, right? She's like, come back tomorrow and, try again, or like give it some, whatever, right? So I go back to I was gonna call it my room. I go back to my like cell and I spend my night, probably being terrorized, probably maybe locked in my room overnight if that dude was working. And yeah. So anyways, the next day comes, I go back to occupational therapy. I get there and this woman, I don't know, she gives me my shit, I guess. She takes it out of the file. They maybe analyzed it all night from deciding if my strokes, if they could somehow frame it that like this clearly happy person and positively inclined person in their spirit, heart, and mind, maybe we can make this seem like she's suicidal when she's not. So I get back there, I look at it, I look at her, I say it's done. And then I go and do something else, Sudoku or some shit, I don't know. But I said it's done. I looked at it, I'm like, there's no fucking way I'm touching this. This is perfect. It's done. I'm an artist. Even if I wasn't, I said my expression and my interpretation of this piece is done. It's done. Who the hell are you to tell me my shit's not done? That's number one. That's my first association. The second one's pretty much it's pretty deep too. So it's related. So after these, especially at that hospital, because that particular hospital is the most violent institution I actually know of. So when I left there in 2013, they had me on a cocktail of Invega Sustenna shots that they refused to give me anywhere else except my buttocks. Terribly painful. Terribly fucking painful. That and lithium. They were drugging me to such an extent at this time period that I spent a good year, not even lying, like it was over a year, but I don't want to get into that. I spent a good year lying in bed. Most days I'd wake up and my entire brain would be on this cycle, in this loop. I wouldn't be able to get out of bed for like hours. I would just lie there and think negative thoughts. I'd be like, what is happening to my brain? Like, how come I can't get these out, right? What are they doing to me? And trying to figure out how to get to this position, right, where I can explain this to you on this video. So they had tortured me so badly that I couldn't speak, I couldn't rap, I couldn't sing, and I couldn't write. I'm a writer. I've written so many books. My book is over there. I'm too comfortable to get up. But they couldn't write a sentence. So I made a decision. I'm going to get myself out of this. I don't know how, but I'm going to figure it out, and I'm going to do this baby steps. That time period, what required in my growth was a lot of baby steps. So my first step was go buy a notebook, right? I decided to go and buy a notebook. I was living in this area of Montreal called Côte-Neige. There's a French bibliothèque, no, library. That's not the right word for a bookstore. It's a library. Anyways, there's a French bookstore called Renaud Bray. And I went in. I didn't normally go in, but I figured they must have a notebook section, right? Turns out they did. They had a lovely notebook section. I walk into the notebook section. I see Sunflowers. It's a hardcover, beautiful notebook. It must have cost me like 16 Canadian or something like that. And I bought it. And I told myself, looking at that sunflower notebook, I was going to write again. I was going to get my expression back, right, in this notebook. So, sure enough, I actually did in that very notebook. So I started this way. It took me a little bit, but I said, okay, first I'm going to start off with a word, right? One word. I'm just going to, my task is get one word down. After that, my next one is a sentence. After that, a page, and so on and so forth, right? You get the point. So in that book, that notebook, I actually started a book, and I called it I and I. Like I and I, right? Letter I, and sign, I. That's it. That was the title of the book. Started that book, and during that time period, within less than 3 weeks of starting that book, I recalled the memory of being raped by my ex, who was my professor. I recalled the memory of the first time I had sex with him. It was rape. So that's not sexual intercourse, actually, that's rape. When consent is removed from sexual intercourse, it no longer becomes sexual intercourse. It actually becomes fully a crime, and it becomes rape. No consent equals rape. Just know that. So, yeah, I recalled the entire memory. I downloaded the whole memory of the rape. And then, so what happened was with that, I had a neighbor on my floor in my apartment in Côte-Neige who had lived in my unit before and then moved into a bigger unit across the hall. I was getting his mail, so every now and then he would knock on my door and he'd be like, did I get any mail, or like whatever, and I'd give it to him, right? One day he said, yo, if you want to smoke a joint, let's smoke a joint, right? And I was actually forced to go to, this is the most ridiculous thing in the world you ever heard. Actually, this actually happened to me. I was forced to go to outpatient rehab for marijuana. I'm not even joking. Marijuana. They tried to convince me I had a marijuana addiction. They're like, yeah, we're going to drug you and dope up your body and destroy your metabolism and your metabolic regulation system. We're going to do that. We're going to make you high. We're going to give you internet access so everybody thinks you're actually insane. We're going to torture you. And yeah, when you find something medicinal that actually helps with the pain we're inflicting on you physically, mentally, spiritually, in every single way, we're going to pretend you have an addiction and we're going to force you to go to rehab. Went to rehab, and make it go to rehab. That's a little Riri and Amy Winehouse for you. Those are the best rehab songs. So yeah, so I was forced to go to outpatient rehab. The best thing about this outpatient rehab thing, though, was like, technically it was like the type of thing where it's like, okay, they have rules. Like if they understand if you're using whatever your thing of choice is, mine being marijuana, weed, grass, ooh, sweet ganja, which is now legal everywhere in the country that I'm currently residing. So yeah, so the rule was you could use, technically, they don't encourage it, right? They don't want you to use it all, but they're like, if you're struggling, blah, 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 you can technically use the night before, but don't use the same day as rehab. Well, I had to break that rule sometimes because I'm like, it's marijuana. So I get there, and at the beginning, it was like this really weird thing because I was like in this room and we would go to this square table. People are talking about their addictions to terrible things, cocaine, crack, heroin. And every time they get to me, I'm like, yeah, marijuana, like it's awful. But I I learned some things. The only positive thing I learned from that entire experience was this tactic called play the tape forward, which is basically like, if you're thinking about using, the way you think is like, okay, if I smoke this marijuana, right, but AKA, like for someone else, it could be alcohol. It could be a very serious drug, right? So in those instances, something that can help you is play the tape forward. If I do this, what can that lead to? What kind of roads can that lead to, right? It's a good tactic. For me, it was always like less pain, feeling happier, being able to have an appetite, and like enjoying life. So like, score, right? So anyways, yeah, so I went to this rehab, and I had been off marijuana, clean, no marijuana in my system for like 5, 6 months, definitely somewhere around there. Above 3 months, definitely under 6, somewhere sort of around that. I think it was around the 5 month mark. So when he introduced me, when he invited me to come and smoke a joint, I was already thinking to myself, yeah, that could be nice, right? Like I'd love to smoke a little bit and with someone, you know. I just felt like it felt right to do that way. So I did. And I should note, this may have been a factor, may not have. My friend, my neighbor, he's Moroccan, and my ex who raped me is Lebanese. So, and they used similar, like he had similar but not the same at all. They're very different people. There were similarities between design in their apartments, and there were similarities between spices. So those are actually, I think, very notable. And I also used to smoke marijuana with my ex, so the one who raped me, the rapist ex. Jesus Christ, isn't that the most awful thing to say? But it's nonetheless true. So if he sees this, that's for him. Oh wait, is this one worse? No, this one's worse. So anyway, so yeah, so I took one toke. He smoked, and he passed it to me. Took one toke. I was sitting on his couch, and I was looking at him, and my brain went. At the time, so I had, or whatever you want to say, if you want to believe I have PTSD, good for you. I had it. I've actually healed most things about it, which is really great. And it's actually in the nature of the post-traumatic stress disorder that, like, after the particular thing, you can recover from it. It's implied in the name, post-traumatic stress disorder. If you take out the post, you lose the stress disorder, right? So basically enough time has passed since certain very specific incidences in my life. I've done a lot of ample healing, and the main things that I struggled with PTSD are pretty much gone. I'm not saying they're disappeared, but they're pretty much gone. I was able to heal that, not on my own. I had a great therapist. I know great healers. I do active healing work, and I am very much so a healer myself. I have a lot of scientific training up until the age of 19 that was very specific. And then I have a lot of healing training after that age too. So I have my, like, it's not like it doesn't make sense that I could do this on my own, but I didn't do it on my own. I had a lot of help. I put in a lot of time, resources, and work to get to this place that you see right now. Because as mentioned in the first, in this story, I wasn't able to speak in 2013. Mute. I could not talk. So anyways, so I take a hit of the joint. Like, I think it was literally the first hit. And all of a sudden, I literally can see it in my brain. So flashbacks with PTSD, especially at that time, they were almost unmanageable at that time, right? I don't really have flashbacks anymore, which I find very interesting. Now, the way that PTSD thing affects me, my post-traumatic growth, because I'm not in a PTSD phase. I'm in somewhere after the PTG, like the post-traumatic growth, but like normalized, like and calibrated, stable, I'd say. Now it's like that PTSD thing that I had with the flashbacks is more, if I'm recalling a memory, I can do certain things where I can get details from it because of the trauma, if you understand what I'm saying. So I had the flashback in his couch. It was my first time hanging out with this dude. No, it was the second time. But the night before, the first time I hung out with him, I'd actually mentioned my ex because I was missing him. And he had tried to add me on LinkedIn, which is the dumbest thing for, like, who rapes a student and then is like, oh, she has one connection on LinkedIn, let me be the other one. Who does that? Someone who's an idiot. I am not sorry to this man. He's a fucking buffoon. He raped me. Like, that's just dumb. It's dumb for a lot of reasons, but anyways, to rape anyone is stupidity, but like to rape me is just like, it's a death wish. So anyways, so not with me killing them, like others probably, but like definitely spiritually, you're probably really fucked. And I know you are, because you revealed in that thing what happens to you when you have sex. That's hilarious, because that's directly the universe punishing you for definitely my rape, but also probably all the other ones, because I know you did a lot more. Your smile you gave me before you raped me tells me that. So, yeah, so, and your behavior after actually tells me that too. So I recalled the entire memory. It just came, right? And the thing that was interesting about this is, so he raped me on I remembered in October. He raped me on Sunday, June 6th, 2010, which was Grand Prix weekend in Montreal. He raped me that weekend. And he raped me 3 times that day. And by the time I got home and woke up the next morning, I had no recollection of the rape, just sex. And I had been liking him for 6 months. I don't know how that happened. He may have drugged me. I don't know. It did though. And it could have very easily, that can actually very easily be explained with survival mechanism. Blah, blah, blah. Pick up, which the book called again? The Body Keeps the Score by Van Bessel Cork. I think it is his last name. Sorry, bro. I know the first writer, your name is Van Bessel, but is it Cork? Anyways, he's a doctor. Great book on trauma and understanding the brain and trauma. It helps a lot for healing to understand it. So yeah, so anyways, want that answer, check there. So yeah, I forgot. And I continued to see him for 1.5 years, which is the worst part. It's so disturbing. But anyway, it's one of the worst parts for sure. The relationship part is so twisted because the rape took place right at the beginning. And it takes place at all. It makes it twisted, but like it definitely took place at the beginning. So that puts the entire... It basically means he never once had consensual sex with me because I was never in a position to say no, right? It was proven to me on that first day, saying no to him is very dangerous. I was raped 3 times that day, so yeah. Anyway, so I recall, so 3 years later, so that was June 6, 2010, in October 2013, after severe systemic torture, trauma, confinement, experimentation with drugs, a lot of doping and harm done to my body in many direct and indirect ways. After all that, I recalled the rape. And here's what happened. I was sitting on his couch and I thought to myself, I have 2 options right now. Option A, spit it out, say it out loud, which gives you accountability and means you will not forget it. Option B, do the socially like appropriate thing, more appropriate thing, and say nothing and wait till you get home and write down your Van Gogh notebook. What do you think I chose? Option A. That memory had been stuck for 3 years and it was that vital. And the reason why I was so fucked up was because the reason why I knew I didn't have to give background information. All I had to do was say the name of the rapist and that he raped me, and then a conversation could ensue, and it did. He actually handled it very well. I'll give him props on that. My friend, not the rapist, obviously. So yeah, so I turned to my neighbor and I spit out. The narrative name I gave him was Yusef. That is not his real name. I want to stress that. So I said, blank, Yusef, the dude, raped me. All I said was that. I said it right away. I did not hesitate. Once I had that process of like option A, option B thing, I was like option A and boom, right? So I said it. I'm like, oh God, I almost just said his name. So I said, blank, rape me. And he looked at me and he snapped his face like, what? Because I had just been talking about missing him and how he tried to add me on LinkedIn. So we had a conversation. I told him everything I just recalled. And then I was wondering, I didn't even sit to continue the joint, right? I had 2 puffs maximum. Like it was 1 hit. And then I ran back to my apartment across the hall and I wrote down everything that was pertinent that I remember. It's probably the most I had written down since I'd gotten that notebook. It was definitely at least a page and a half. And then my new life began, right? That night was a very fucked up night. I remember walking back and forth by my window in my bedroom and like grabbing my head. And I was kind of like this. I was pacing back and forth. I was kind of like, I wasn't going like this, but I was like holding my head because I was freaking out. I was like, and I remember feeling so fucked up because I was like, how am I going to explain that I dated my rapist? Because it's not like he just raped me 3/4 of the way in. It was day 1. I couldn't explain it to myself. I was more worried about how I was going to explain it to like a future, like, husband or like someone, kids, like, people who are significant to me, right? And actually matter. So I'm like, how am I going to explain this to someone, right? I thought I was fucked up as the victim. Wrong. He was fucked up as the assailant, the criminal in that scenario. Hella fucked up. So that's the story of the Van Gogh notebook, right? So now onto the subject of the protesters. Let's bring it back there. So that painting means a lot to me. Obviously, I've been talking about it for half an hour, getting to this point, which is actually the point of the whole video, to talk about climate activism in general, and what happened at the National Gallery. Here's my thoughts at this stage, right? Because I'm still processing this. I'm not fully decided on what I think exactly about this. I don't think this is a case of that was wrong or this is correct. I actually don't think it's that. That's why I think it's such an interesting conversation. So the thing about the National Gallery incident is as follows. I've been to the National Gallery many times. I love it there. It's not my favorite gallery. I prefer the Tate or definitely many on Brick Lane. But like it's not my favorite London gallery, but it's a beautiful one. There's great things there and it's awesome, right? So it has sunflowers, case in point. It's that good. So yeah, I don't disagree with those protesters. I think they did something with that. How do I know they did something with that? Because that affected me. I shared it on Instagram. And then I just commented on it on Twitter. But it moved me. It didn't move me. Sorry. It affected me. I felt the emotional, right? Like, I saw that soup go at the sunflowers. And then I saw the girl turn around and address. I heard the tremble in her voice because she knew what she did. I heard the fear in her voice, but I saw the courage and the power she had to be like, I know what I just did. I know what I'm doing right now, but what I'm saying is more important. And what I did is making my point. Her point was, we are placing greater value on material objects and materialism. Where's my lip gloss? Too far to apply. Okay, so but my lips, I wasn't doing that for that reason. My lips are feeling dry. So we place as a society, I'm saying we because I'm a part of the society, but I'm not exactly like this, but I'm explaining it for the point. We place more importance in this society on material objects than human life. I could prove that very easily in many ways, but she proved it with the sunflowers thing, so I don't have to go through that right now. It could be a conversation for another day if people want to get into it. But that's the point. The point was, it's very interesting. If you think about what's going on right now, right? If you think about the type of activism we're seeing in the world at the moment, climate activism is severely potent at the moment, right? Like, it's very much so like climate activism is Pierre Calamus, Chase Bank, chained himself to Chase Bank. Why? They're the worst with fossil fuels. They're so bad with fossil fuels. He's like, I know I will draw media attention with this. I know I will go to jail for this. I know there will be a case. But I also know what I know about the science about what's happening right now, and I actually care about the planet. I care about because the thing is, at the end of the day, it's like we're hurting the planet, right? So from a science perspective, the planet is being harmed by us. It's anthropogenic. It's us, the humans, that are doing this. But when it comes to climate activists, they're like perfect example. I was, how do I say this? I was not an organizer from Occupy Wall Street by any means, but I was more than an active observer. I was involved in some ways, right? Like, I knew it was important enough that I had to pay attention and be there. And I was, and I did it. But, you know, when within the Occupy Wall Street thing, there's like in every, like with Black Lives Matter, like with, feminism, let's say sometimes, you know, like with every subdivision of an activism type crisis subject matter, within every single one, there's always extremists, right? Like, even if you look at how people look at Islam, perfect example. People look at Islam, they're like, everyone who's Muslim, they will say this. Americans, there are Americans who do think, I'm not American, don't be fooled. I am Canadian, but it doesn't matter because I'm North American. It's all good. I don't care who you think where I'm from. I'm a global citizen. But there are definitely Americans who think that all Muslims are terrorists. Why do they think that? Because that's what the propaganda that was placed in the news and in media. They're not. I can guarantee you this. I know many. They're awesome. Many are awesome. The ones I know are awesome, actually. I don't know a bad Muslim. Let me think about it. Personally, I don't. So, but within that religion, there are extremists, right? Correct. Just like with every other subdivision, like in white supremacy in the United States. Definitely some extremists. Insurrection on January 6th, anyone? So, all that to say, there will always be extremists in every activism category. But you have to admit, right now in society, I thought I had chocolate on my teeth there. I don't. Right now in society, the climate activists are getting extreme, which is something that we have to pay attention to. It's not something to ignore. That's the point. You can't ignore. No one can. Dan Rather can't. I can't. That's for sure. Washington Post can't. We cannot ignore Tomato Soup on Sunflowers by Van Gogh. The dude who cut off his ear and sent it to his girlfriend. Did he send it to his girlfriend? Wild. Wild. And now these days people will be like, here's my Spotify playlist. And goes like, here's my bloody ear in the mail. The postage. I was like seeping blood when it arrived. Did he send it to his girlfriend? I think so. Ex-girlfriend? Probably an ex. Hate snorting on camera. This is the second time this happened to me today. Snort. It's actually, I've gotten really healthy. I actually saw, it looks like I got a nose job a little bit, only because I have less inflammation. And, oh no, that's too much chocolate. Excellent. The appropriate amount. So yeah. So, I snort now when I laugh real hard. Sometimes I get into snort fests. Have I gotten into a snort fest over Kevin Hart? Probably. Who's put me into a snort fest that I can tell you about? Anyways, not important. Not at the moment. So yeah, so sorry about the snort. Sorry, not sorry. So anyways, so as I was saying, climate activists are getting very loud. They're getting very in your face, which is a symptom, a sign of not to ignore them at all. It's a sign to perhaps give them a microphone, maybe make a press conference with them. Like, there's so many different ways we can approach this situation. So many. Law is meant to evolve. Law is meant to protect us, the planet, the environment. We're supposed to be protected by it. The nature of law and the legal system is evolution. And it's actually supposed to be created and based upon human rights at its root, right? It's not always the case. Just be black in America and find out quick. Or be a social justice activist and somehow surreptitiously end up in America and see them try and send you to Rikers real quick. Well, that actually happened. I didn't get sent to Rikers, though. Nope. They tried real hard, and it didn't work. Because they're like, oh, that's Brittany Shane. It's actually what happened. So anyways, so, right. As I was saying, climate activism. We can't ignore it. We shouldn't ignore it. I don't. I pay attention. I follow Peter Clemens on Twitter. I think his handle is the climate guy. The climate something, or climate guy. Climate dude. Climate something. Anyways, he's dope. Peter Clemens, the dude who chained himself to Chase Bank. He says dope things all the time. You should pay attention to him. And yeah, we should start caring a lot more about the environment. For many fucking reasons. But on the subject of sunflowers specifically, I'm going to wrap this up. Dan Rather's not wrong, and those women are definitely not wrong. But Dan Rather's not either. And let's talk about that for a brief moment. Dan Rather said, to prove the point about destruction, we're not supposed to destroy things we love. Granted, that's true. But those women, yes, you're not supposed to upset people like me per se, because it's like I'm very aware of what's happening, right? But the thing about sunflowers, it's so famous. It's like Botticelli's Venus, Birth of Venus, right? It's so well known. It's like Klimt's, you know the one. I mean, I don't know the name right now, but it's a fertility one. It's like yellow background and, you know what I mean? Like there's certain paintings, Manet, The Brunch and the Grass, like, like there's certain paintings that like you barely, Edvard Munch, the Cree, masterpieces that we all know about. Oh, what's her name? Yeah, the one from the Beyonce video with Jay-Z. The Beyonce video with Jay-Z. What was that song called? Boss? I don't know. It's the same album as Boss, though. Anyways, moral of the story is, sorry, Hove, I didn't mean no disrespect, but like, let's be honest, everybody in Beyonce's orbit is in relation to Beyonce, right? Like even Hove has to be like Beyonce's husband, right? Many a times. So yeah. So on the subject of sunflowers, they made their point. How do I know they made their point? Because that's the first time I felt that, and that was the intention, and she did the right thing. So to those brave climate protesters, I have your back. I'm on your side. To the climate protesters, please know that like you're being heard. You're being noticed. You're appreciated as a children's rights activist and one of the most passionate, fervent ones I know of and loudest and most potent and on the nose. I'm looking for my hair clip and I can't find this shit anywhere. It's got Happy Days on it. I just found it. Hella happy. Haha. Found it. Yeah, so on the... Are these dry? Excellent. Well, I've been talking for 40 minutes. I should fucking hope so. So, in conclusion, let's end this thing here. In conclusion, don't hurt the environment and maybe sunflowers will be safe. That's not the moral of the story here. The moral of this... There's a hair stuck in me, but I think it's attached to my head. It's looking out. It is not attached to my head. Doesn't even look red. It's slightly red. Ginger. I'm a ginger. I'm proud of it. I'm a ginger by choice. Anyway, so moral of the story on that subject matter is we have to pay attention to what's happening with the environment. We have to stop pushing people like Greta Thunberg, who was mute during her childhood. She couldn't speak, right? Then she started protesting with a sign, and now it's like a Friday climate strike every week, ever since then, right? So we have to stop ignoring this issue. I am very cognizant of it. I'm not saying I'm perfect on this subject matter. I'm definitely way better at respecting the environment. I've always respected the environment, but there was a time period where, as I mentioned, I was being drugged and tortured, and you don't exactly always have access. It pisses you off, but you don't always have access to like a recycling bin. There's no recycling bin in a recycling where there's a garbage. Maybe sometimes there's maybe they have a recycling bin now. I don't know. You know, you have to, sometimes you get to points in life where you have to live in a way that is counter to who you are and what's, your character says about you and who you believe yourself to be, right? Now I live exceptionally authentically. I'm vegan, which makes sense. I'm in the process of getting rid of all of my leather, anything that had anything to do with animal cruelty. It's a process. It's hard. And it's harder because, this is such a weird thing to say, my aunt passed and she gave me a whole bunch of things. She was a very big shopper. She had a very large budget for shopping, and she loved to shop. And she shopped nonstop, and she made it very clear to me that it was very important to her that she gave me very specific instructions regarding her wardrobe, put it like that. And I respected her wishes, and I respect her and honor her memory with that all the time. And I'm doing exactly what she told me to do with it, and how to wear it, and how to, the things that were important to her are important to me. Her passing words to me were very important. And, she told me two things on her deathbed. When I had to go and visit her meters from where I was tortured about a week before she passed, she told me I was brilliant and I was a survivor. And we said we loved each other, and that was it. It was the last time I saw her in that form. And, she left me a lot of material things. But those material things are not more important than that moment. And that's the point. So this is Ari London saying peace out. Stop ignoring the climate protesters. Start listening, paying attention. Look into the science maybe a bit yourself. Look into Bill Nye or something. He's the dopest. He has a new show. Maybe I'm going to watch it, actually. But he has a new show. I think it's on NBC. Could be wrong. It's definitely on YouTube, though. So check it out. Bill Nye is the dopest. He has it's about, I think natural disasters and stuff specifically. And yeah, just start educating yourself on the subject matter. And if you want to respect the environment, slowly start doing so. You don't have to be like, that's it. It doesn't have to be like an everything at once type thing. It could be like, okay, every time I finish my Snapple, I recycle it. And then it's a domino effect of positivity for the environment and the planet after that. So those are my thoughts on the sunflower incident that happened at the National Gallery. I personally think, I've thought about this a bit, I think Van Gogh, it's not that he would be cool with it, right? I think his spirit would be like, you know what I mean? Like I'm thinking if that was me in 100 years, and it's like, oh, my paintings aren't on this wall, they're on literally every other wall. This one's just me and Marilyn. Yeah, if it's that painting to me is a masterpiece. I'm looking at my painting, Greek Isles. Love that painting. If somebody, and it has glass on it, right? It had minimal damage, correct? It wasn't damaged. There wasn't drastic damage, but there's minimal, which probably just means the frame. If it was secure enough, the only way the actual art itself could have been damaged is if it had seeped through the glass on the sides and touched the painting. The thing about that, though, too, is very often, which a lot of people aren't aware of, paintings are often, because of the wear and tear of aging of paintings, they're often retouched, right? They're not altered per se, but they're retouched a little bit. So maybe it needs to be retouched, right? Maybe it just needs a little love. Maybe it needs a little bit more security. But The point is, there was minimal damage, and that's what was important. The painting is safe, but this conversation took place, and that's doper. So thank you to those climate activists. I wish you the best with the legal system in the UK. I hope it works out for you, and shout out to Peter Klamas. Peace.